Hey everybody, welcome back to Photorec.tv. I'm Toby, and this is my van. This video is an update. It's been 18 months now since I purchased this van and turned it into my little photo dream machine minivan camper. And I want to share some updates, some big product changes, and some pretty big changes to the van. It's hard to believe that it's been about 18 months since I purchased this van. It's even harder to believe that when I return home from this Seattle to Death Valley and back to Seattle road trip, I will be approaching, maybe even passing 30,000 miles. I think that's impressive because all of those miles have really come in trips. This isn't a daily driver. I do drive it occasionally to run errands, to pick up the kids, but generally the miles in this van have come from longer trips, and there's been some fantastic ones. There's a reason van life is exploding. People are realizing just how awesome it is to have a cozy little home in a reasonable sized vehicle so close to epic photography locations. I mean, literally just steps away. And I spent about 40, maybe close to 50 nights in the van. I can park it anywhere and it's not suspicious. It's a freaking minivan. Everybody's got one. There's a billion of them on the road. I have parked on city streets, neighborhood streets, national park parking lots, which I think is technically, there's a little bit of gray zone there. If they don't say no camping, then I think you can sleep in your vehicle overnight. I put up these little blackout curtains, you can call them that. These are these heat shields, but then Chris glued this black fabric to the other side. You put those up and it just looks like it's a heavily tinted car with nobody inside, and you can be nice inside and cozy, and those keep it warmer too. Last night in Death Valley, it was about 19, 20 degrees when I woke up. It was 30 inside the van, which is noticeably warmer. I noticed that the one other couple that was in this little camping area with me, they had a tent set up, but when I left in the morning at like 5:30, they both were in the car with it running. But let's get to things that I've changed and a couple of things that I still plan to change and give you a little bit of inspiration. The first thing, you might laugh, but I've had the van lifted. You might say, wait a second, you can lift a minivan? Yeah, apparently you can. Even on gentle forest roads, I had to be careful at times to avoid hitting the rocks in the median or the middle, of the road. These forest roads aren't necessarily level. They've got a little hump in the middle usually, and if there's a bigger rock or two sitting there, I had to be careful. The minivans are quite low to the ground. That makes it really comfortable to get in and out, all of your family members at all their different ages and abilities. That's great, but I found that wasn't so great on those forest roads. So there are kits that can give you a couple of inches. Now, a couple of inches doesn't sound like much, but I now have at least Subaru clearance, and that's pretty decent. I've now spent the last couple of days in Death Valley, over 100 miles and a day and a half on remote, gravel, rough roads, and I had absolutely no problems. It is still, of course, two-wheel drive, so I'm not going four-wheeling in this thing. That's four-wheel driving, or I just wanted to be able to go down heavier-duty gravel roads without worrying. Along with lifting, I put on better tires, because I had in mind spending some time in Death Valley. I wanted to go down some of these dirt roads and gravel roads, like the road that takes you to Racetrack Playa, but I did not want to worry about getting flat tires. And now, better tires isn't a guarantee, but it was about time to change the tires anyway, and I went with some all-terrain tires. I went with a Falcon Wild Peak all-terrain, and again, I am extremely happy. I've put on almost 2,000 miles since purchasing them, and they have been fantastic. One of the things, though, in shopping for tires, I realized how ridiculously hard it can be for new people to shop for cameras. I knew very little about tires, so I started researching, started looking on forums, started Googling things like recommended tires for Death Valley, and then kind of came up with a list of tires that seemed good, and then started Googling those. And doing all of that reminded me, those of you who are new to photography and cameras, how overwhelming it can be. And I understand it is quite overwhelming when you're buying a new camera. There's so many different models to choose from. And then you read one review, like there was one review of the Wild Peaks that was like, it's terrible on wet roads. What does Seattle have a lot of? Wet roads. So I was like, well, that's concerning. But that was just one review. I didn't see anybody else talking about that even when I started Googling it. So don't let individual single reviews get you down. The good news is so many cameras that you buy today are good cameras and are going to do well. And you don't have to worry about them hydroplaning and killing you. So there's that, of course. And then there's me. Email me. One of my goals in 2022 is to be as helpful as I can. So if anytime you have a camera question, no matter how small, send me an email. My email's right down below in the description of this video. Now, another thing that I've added to this van since we've last talked is a roof rack. I've got a Thule roof rack on top. Mounted on that roof rack is a Renogy 200-watt solar panel. Honestly, it might be a little bit bigger than I need, but I love how fast it can charge up the battery that I have in here now. And that's a big product upgrade that we'll talk about in a second. I do have a big cargo box I can put up there. I do see a big decrease in miles per gallon when driving with that cargo box. So I didn't bring it on this trip. It was only me coming, enough room inside, although, you know, sometimes I have to move things around a little bit. But I would like to get a smaller cargo box to be able to throw some things up there sometimes, because it gets a little tight in the van in general. I mean, it is a minivan. All of that said though, for the 1,500 miles I've driven so far coming down here to Death Valley, I was averaging 25 miles per gallon. I think that's pretty good. All right, let's come inside. Let's look at this battery and a couple other electronic upgrades, and then start to wrap up this video with 4 products that I talked about in the first video that I just want to say after 18 months, I only love more. So that solar panel is wired into the EcoFlow Pro. This is a pretty serious battery. It's 720-ish watt-hour battery. What I found was the previous battery I talked about, the little RAV Power, after a day of powering the fridge and anything else, it would be near zero. And it charged by running the car. And if I wasn't running the car, if I wasn't driving somewhere, then it was running out. And so I needed a bigger battery, and this battery has been fantastic. One of the things that I love about it is that it has a universal or standard solar hookup. So even though it's a Renogy solar panel on the roof, that hookup works with this EcoFlow Pro battery. And I've been very, very happy with that. I've also added a 1,500 watt inverter. That's a quick way to charge the EcoFlow if I don't have solar. And I've also added additional USB and cigarette DC power options. Now, one of the things that I don't love about this EcoFlow battery is that it uses a Wi-Fi connection to an app to report on its status. Why not Bluetooth? Bluetooth just works and stays on. The Wi-Fi constantly disconnects. So knowing what battery charge it's at can be a little bit of a pain if you're sitting in the driver's seat and can't see the battery. But that's pretty minor. Overall, I'm really happy with this battery and love just how fast it can charge via solar or AC power. All right, let's run through the 4 products that I've been using now for 18 months that I just love. One is this little battery-powered faucet, an internal battery. You just press a button and it just works. The other end of this tube goes into our big 7-gallon plastic jug for water. It's just such an easy way to fill a Camelback or a Lexan bottles. And I don't know, I charge this thing once every couple of months and it just keeps working. I love it. What I need to do though is figure out a better way to attach it in the vehicle, because it does fall down sometimes, and when it does fall down, it will leak water over time. So I need to make sure that it's secure before I go down bumpy roads in Death Valley. Next product that I want to talk about that I love, this is just a little internal battery powered fan. On its low setting, it will run all night. We haven't camped a ton in very hot weather, but in warmer weather where it's not too bad, having this little fan running all night long right there by the little moonroof, I almost called it a skylight. Actually, no, sorry, it's a sunroof, right? Because it opens. And then we have a screen covering for that and just pulls in cool air all night long and keeps it kind of circulating inside the van. That's very nice. I love that. And I mentioned this at the beginning in the kind of incognito mode, these heat shields. One side shiny, the other side Chris glued the black fabric to. Not only do I love them for making the van so private and incognito, let's use that word one more time, But I also love it when I'm leaving the van during the day. I put up the 3 front ones, and no one can see in. No one can see what stuff is in here, what's interesting in here, and I feel like the van is a lot less interesting as a target if you have no idea what's happening inside. Maybe a person's inside, maybe a giant bloodthirsty dog is inside. You're just not gonna necessarily mess with a car that you can't see in well. And so it feels a little bit safer to leave the vehicle with a lot of stuff in it. And then the last thing is that fridge. This fridge is just fantastic. It uses so little power, it stays cold forever, and it just works. And it has a Bluetooth app. So I'm driving down the road in the driver's seat, and I just want to check in on the fridge, make sure it's at a correct temperature. Because I will say one thing that does happen is the little DC cord for it comes loose from the EcoFlow battery from time to time. And so sometimes it'll be off for a little while because somebody banged the cord, or maybe I went over a bigger bump and it came loose. I don't know if to blame that on the battery or the fridge, but it's just really nice to be able to check from the front seat and see how the fridge is doing. And that brings us to the end of Van Update 2022. If you found this interesting, give a quick thumbs up. I really appreciate that, and it's a nice way to say to the YouTube algorithm that this video is worth watching. And of course, if you want to watch my previous video where I show the build in detail and how we did it all, that's linked right down in the description. And if you're interested, if you're not already a subscriber and you would like to be notified of future videos, photography tips, trips, tutorials, ticks. What's ticks? I think I meant to say tricks. And all of the rest, well, you can hit that subscribe button plus the little bell to make sure you're notified of future videos. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye. Just waited for that military jet to pass on by a little bit. A little ironic to be in such a gorgeous scenic location and have loud disturbances. Yesterday at Death Valley in Eureka Sand Dunes, a jet flew over so fast, so low, that the dune hid him until he came up. In my eyesight, I saw the entire jet, and then it was another second before the wave of sound hit me. Oh man, it was something. I mean, it was kind of interesting, but it wasn't the most enjoyable experience I had while I was in Death Valley.